After 18 years of marriage, I thought I knew my wife. Then a single anonymous text shattered everything. Does your wife always touch her boss like that? As we drove home from the company gala, her secret smile at her phone made my blood run cold. I never imagined discovering the truth would lead me to confront my biggest business rival in a hotel suite where he was meeting my wife. My name is Kevin Walsh. I'm 45 years old and have spent the last 18 years of my life building a career at Meridian Pharmaceuticals, working my way up to regional manager for the entire Northeast Division. I oversee 7 states, hundreds of employees, and millions in revenue. Professionally, I've achieved everything I set out to do. I married Pamela, Pam, my college sweetheart, right after graduation. We have a 14-year-old son, Tyler, who's going through the typical teenage rebellious phase. We live in a beautiful colonial in Connecticut with a 3-car garage and a pool. The American dream, right? But dreams have a funny way of turning into nightmares. It was a Friday in September, after our company's annual gala. Pam had been especially excited about this one. She bought a new dress, spent the afternoon at the salon getting her hair done. She looked stunning, I'll give her that. As manager of investor relations at a competing firm, she understood the importance of these corporate functions. Networking, schmoozing, playing the game. We were heading home from the event, driving through the quiet Connecticut streets. Pam was sitting beside me in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone, occasionally smiling at something on the screen. The radio played softly in the background, some jazz station she preferred. The Peterson account looks promising, I said, trying to make conversation. Marcus thinks we might close by end of quarter. She responded, barely looking up. That's when my phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. At first, I ignored it. Driving at night, I try to be responsible. But when it buzzed again, insistently, I pulled over at a scenic overlook and fished it out. Everything okay? Pam asked, finally looking up from her screen. Just need to check this, I said, glancing at the notification. The message was from a number I didn't recognize. Does your wife always touch her boss like that? Check your email for pictures from tonight. My blood ran cold. I glanced at Pam, who had returned to her phone, the blue light illuminating her face in the dark car. Was she texting him now? Right beside me. Who's messaging you this late? I asked, trying to sound casual despite the hammering in my chest. Just Jen about tomorrow's spa day. She replied smoothly, without missing a beat. Another lie to add to the pile I hadn't even known existed until now. I sat there in the car, my fingers hovering over the email icon on my phone. Once I opened it, there would be no going back. Whatever I saw would change everything. Pam shifted in her seat, clearly growing impatient. Kevin, it's getting late. Can we go? She sounded irritated, not concerned. I took a deep breath and opened my email. There they were, 5 photos from tonight's gala. In the first, Pam was laughing with Brandon Pierce, the executive director of Nevera Pharmaceuticals, our biggest competitor. Nothing unusual there, just business networking. But as I swiped through the remaining images, my stomach turned to stone. Pam with her hand on Brandon's arm, leaning in too close. Brandon whispering in her ear, his hand resting on the small of her back. And the final image, the two of them slipping into a service hallway, her fingers entwined with his. The timestamp showed this was taken just 30 minutes before we left. Who's sending you work emails at this hour? Pam asked, trying to peek at my screen. I locked the phone immediately. Just Miller being Miller. I lied, referring to my notoriously workaholic VP of sales. Nothing that can't wait till Monday. My mind was racing. Brandon Pierce. Of all people. The man who'd been poaching my sales team for the past year. The man who'd stolen the Hadley contract from under me last quarter. And now my wife. I pulled back onto the road, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Pam resumed scrolling through her phone, occasionally smiling at something on the screen. Each smile felt like a knife twisting in my gut. You seem to be enjoying yourself tonight, I said, keeping my tone neutral. It was fine. The usual circus. She didn't look up. I saw you talking with Brandon Pierce. Her scrolling paused for a microsecond, so brief I might have imagined it, before continuing. Oh, I speak with lots of people at these things. Part of the job. Lie number 2. I could feel my blood pressure rising, but forced myself to stay calm. I needed to think strategically. If I confronted her now, she'd have time to warn Brandon, to craft explanations, to cover their tracks. We pulled into our driveway, the motion sensors triggering the exterior lights of our colonial home. Through the front window, I could see Mrs. Rodriguez, our sitter, watching TV. Tyler would be asleep by now. "I'm exhausted," Pam said, unbuckling her seatbelt. "I'm going straight to bed." Of course she was. I needed time to figure out my next move anyway. "I'll be up in a bit. Need to check on Tyler." She nodded absently and headed inside without a backward glance or even a perfunctory kiss goodnight. Had she always been this distant, or had I been too busy to notice? I sat in the car for several more minutes, scrolling through the photos again, each one confirming what I already knew but couldn't quite accept. 18 years of marriage, a son, a life built together, and she'd thrown it all away for what? A younger, more powerful man? The cliché of it made me sick. My phone buzzed again. "Want to know where they're meeting tomorrow?" "Hilton downtown, 2 p.m. Room already booked under her name." I didn't know who this anonymous messenger was, but I was beginning to see them as my only ally in a world suddenly turned upside down. After Mrs. Rodriguez left, I checked on Tyler. He was asleep, headphones still on, an open textbook beside him. Despite everything, I smiled. Even with his recent attitude problems, I was proud of him. Straight A student, starting point guard on his basketball team. Watching him sleep, I felt a surge of protective anger. Pam's betrayal wasn't just against me. It was against our family, against him. I quietly shut his door and went to my home office. Pam was already in bed, probably texting Brandon while pretending to sleep. The thought made my jaw clench. I needed a strategy. Walking in on them tomorrow would provide concrete evidence. But I wanted more than just proof of a physical affair. If this had been going on for months, there would be a paper trail, emails, text messages, credit card statements. As regional manager overseeing 7 states, I hadn't built my career by being impulsive. I approached problems methodically, strategically. I booted on my laptop and accessed our joint accounts. Sure enough, hidden among legitimate business expenses were charges that suddenly made sense. A weekend conference in New York when Brandon had coincidentally been there for a pharmaceutical summit. Lunch charges at restaurants near Navarre's headquarters. A jewelry purchase from Tiffany's that I'd never seen her wear. The next morning, I woke early and went for a 5-mile run, pushing myself harder than usual, letting the physical exertion clear my head. By the time I returned, I had a plan. Pam was in the kitchen, dressed casually, but with more care than a typical Saturday morning warranted. Tyler sat at the island, shoveling cereal into his mouth while scrolling through his phone. "Morning," I said, pouring myself a coffee. "You're up early," Pam remarked, not quite meeting my eyes. Needed to clear my head. Big presentation Monday. Another lie to counter hers. Tyler barely looked up. "Can Jason come over later?" "Sure, bud," I said. "But remember you've got that history project due." "Whatever." Pam glanced at her watch. "I've got that spa day with Jen. Probably be gone most of the afternoon." I nodded, sipping my coffee. "No problem. I've got some work to catch up on anyway." She seemed relieved by my easy acceptance. "Tyler, there's lasagna in the fridge for dinner if I'm not back." Not back by dinner. The Hilton was 20 minutes away. Just how long was this meeting supposed to last? After she left, I turned to Tyler. "Change of plans, bud. Call Jason and see if you can go to his place instead. Something's come up." He looked up, suddenly interested. "Everything okay, Dad?" I forced a smile. "Just some work stuff. I'll drive you over." As I watched him run upstairs to pack his overnight bag, I felt a pang of guilt for the disruption our family was about to endure. But I hadn't caused this. Pam had made her choices, and now we would all have to live with the consequences. I checked my watch. It was 11:30 a.m. Plenty of time to set my plan in motion and be at the Hilton by 2 p.m. I positioned myself in the Hilton lobby at 1:30 p.m., seated in a corner with clear sight lines to both the main entrance and the elevators. I changed into a casual button-down and jeans, anonymous enough to blend in with the weekend crowd. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "At Jason's. His mom says I can stay for dinner." Perfect. Whatever happened today, at least Tyler wouldn't be caught in the crossfire. At precisely 1:52 p.m., Brandon Pierce strolled through the front doors. He wore designer jeans and a blue blazer, looking every bit the successful executive enjoying a weekend in the city. The sight of him made my blood boil, but I maintained my composure. This wasn't some bar fight. This was corporate warfare, and I played smart. He stopped at the front desk, said something that made the receptionist laugh, then headed for the elevators. I caught fragments of his conversation. Already checked in. Mrs. Walsh, Suite 1142. My hands clenched into fists. She'd used our name. Our family name. 10 minutes later, Pam arrived. She looked stunning in a dress I'd never seen before, her hair styled differently than her usual professional look. She bypassed the front desk and headed straight for the elevators. I gave her 5 minutes lead time, then made my move. The elevator ride to the 11th floor felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life implode. I found Suite 1142 easily enough and stood outside the door for a moment, listening. Muffled laughter, a champagne cork popping, glasses clinking. I had options. I could knock, confront them directly. I could call her phone, listen to her lie again. I could even walk away, pretend I'd never seen what I'd seen. Instead, I pulled out my phone and activated the voice recorder. Then I used the keycard I'd obtained from the front desk. It had been surprisingly easy to convince them I'd lost my key when I mentioned my wife had already checked in. The door swung open silently. They were on the couch in the suite's living area, champagne glasses in hand, his arm around her shoulders. They were so engrossed in each other, they didn't notice me for a full 5 seconds. "Don't let me interrupt," I said, my voice deadly calm. Pam's glass crashed to the floor. "Kevin." "What? How?" Brandon jumped up, adjusting his shirt. "Now look, Walsh, this isn't what you think. Isn't it?" I stepped further into the room, maintaining a controlled, measured demeanor that I knew was more intimidating than any shouting could be. "Because it looks like my wife of 18 years is having an affair with a business rival who's been trying to destroy my career for the past year." "Kevin, please." Pam stood, her face ashen. "We can talk about this." "We're way past talking, Pam." My voice remained steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside. "How long?" She hesitated, glancing at Brandon. "How long?" Each word was like a bullet. 6 months, she whispered. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Of coming home to me and Tyler. Of pretending. Brandon moved toward me, hands raised placatingly. "Listen, man. I'm not your man." I cut him off. "And the only thing I want to hear from you is how you plan to explain to your board why you've been sleeping with a competitor's wife while negotiating against his company." The color drained from his face. "That's right, hotshot. Two can play the corporate espionage game." Brandon's business instincts kicked in fast. "This is a personal matter." It stopped being personal when you scheduled strategy meetings with my wife during our annual fiscal review. I interrupted, revealing I knew more than they thought. "Competing corporations. Pillow talk about confidential deals. The board will have a field day with this." Pam stepped forward, trembling. "Kevin, please. Think about Tyler." "I am thinking about Tyler. That's why I'm here, instead of having this conversation at home, where he might overhear that his mother's been lying to our entire family for half a year." Her face crumpled. "Good. Let her feel a fraction of the pain she'd caused." "What do you want?" Brandon asked, ever the negotiator. "From you?" "Nothing. You're Pam's problem now." I turned to her. "I'll be filing for divorce on Monday. I've documented your affair extensively. Given your position at a competing firm and the timing of several leaked proposals, I'd recommend not fighting me on terms." Pam's eyes widened. "You can't possibly think I'd leak company information." 6 months ago, I wouldn't have thought you capable of this either." I gestured around the hotel suite. "Yet here we are." Brandon straightened his jacket. "I should go. Running at the first sign of trouble." I shook my head. "And you thought you were man enough to replace me." He flushed, but said nothing as he grabbed his keys and headed for the door. Once we were alone, Pam collapsed onto the couch. "Kevin, we can work through this. Couples therapy, a fresh start." "There's nothing to work through, Pam. You made your choice. It was a mistake. A stupid, horrible mistake. A 6-month mistake, with multiple hotel rooms, weekend trips, and God knows what else." I remained standing, unwilling to join her on the couch where minutes ago she'd been cuddling with another man. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, not carrying on a prolonged affair with a business rival. She tried another angle. "Think about our finances. The house, our retirement accounts, Tyler's college fund." "I have thought about it. Extensively." My voice was steel. "Everything's documented, including how our joint accounts funded your little romance. My lawyer will contact yours tomorrow." "You already have a lawyer?" She looked stunned. "Unlike you, I don't make major life decisions without proper planning." Her tears seemed genuine now, but they didn't move me. For 18 years, I believed Pam was the one person I could trust completely. That foundation was shattered beyond repair. I'll be staying at the Marriott tonight. I expect you to tell Tyler something appropriate about why I'm not home. Tomorrow, we'll discuss living arrangements and how to break this to him properly. As I turned to leave, she called out, "I do love you, Kevin. I always have." I paused at the door. No, Pam. People don't betray those they love. They just don't. Walking out of that hotel room was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Not because I wanted to stay, but because I was walking away from the life I'd built, the future I'd planned. But I'd be damned if I'd live a lie for another day. The Marriott bartender slid another scotch across the counter. "Rough day." I nodded, not interested in conversation. The amber liquid burned down my throat, but it couldn't touch the coldness that had settled in my chest. My phone buzzed constantly, text messages from Pam alternating between anger, pleading, and guilt. I ignored them all. Around 8 p.m., my phone rang with Tyler's ringtone. "Hey, buddy." I tried to sound normal. "Dad? Where are you?" "Mom's acting weird." I closed my eyes. "I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Work emergency. On a Saturday? And why is Mom crying?" Kids are perceptive, especially teenagers. I couldn't lie to him, but I couldn't devastate him over the phone either. "Tyler, your mom and I are having some problems. We'll talk about it tomorrow when I come home. Okay." Silence, then. "Are you guys getting divorced?" My heart constricted. "We need to talk about this in person, Tyler. Not over the phone." "That means yes." His voice had hardened. "Whatever. It's not like you're ever home anyway." He hung up before I could respond. The accusation stung, especially because it held a grain of truth. Had my career focus created the opportunity for Pam's affair? No. I refused to accept responsibility for her choices. But maybe I'd been too absent from my family. My phone rang again. Marcus, my closest friend since college. "What the hell, man?" he said when I answered. "Pam just called Diane sobbing about how you're filing for divorce. Since when were you guys even having problems?" I signaled the bartender for another drink. "Since Brandon Pierce started sleeping with my wife." Stunned silence. "Brandon Pierce? The Nevera guy?" "Jesus, Kevin." "Yeah." "How long has this been going on?" 6 months, apparently." My voice sounded hollow even in my own ears. Marcus swore colorfully. "What can I do?" "Nothing right now. I'll call you tomorrow." After hanging up, I stared at my reflection in the mirror behind the bar. I barely recognized myself. 18 years of marriage, gone. The retirement we'd planned together. The trips we discussed taking once Tyler was in college. All of it vaporized in an instant. My phone buzzed with an email from Rachel Goldstein, the divorce attorney I'd contacted earlier today. She'd agreed to meet tomorrow morning despite it being Sunday. At least I had a plan. Later, in my hotel room, I sat at the window, overlooking the city lights. My thoughts turned to Tyler. He was already struggling with typical teenage issues. How would this affect him? Would he blame me? Choose sides? The thought of losing my relationship with my son made my chest tighten in a way that Pam's betrayal hadn't. I pulled out my wallet and found the worn photo I always carried. Tyler at age 6 on my shoulders at Patriots game, both of us grinning like fools. Everything I did from this point forward would be with him in mind. Pam might have destroyed our marriage, but I wouldn't let her affair destroy Tyler's sense of family or security. Decision made. I finally fell into a restless sleep, dreaming of empty houses and boardrooms filled with laughing rivals. Sunday morning arrived with merciless clarity. No amount of scotch could blur the reality I now faced, telling my teenage son his mother had betrayed our family. I checked out of the Marriott and drove home, rehearsing what I'd say. There's no guidebook for this conversation. The house was quiet when I arrived. In the kitchen, Pam sat nursing a coffee, eyes red and swollen. She flinched when I entered. "Tyler's still at Jason's," she said. "I told him you'd pick him up." I nodded, grateful for the reprieve. "We need to present a united front when we tell him." Her eyes widened with hope. "Does that mean?" "It means we're still his parents, regardless of what happens to our marriage." She deflated visibly. "Kevin, I made a terrible mistake." "Save it." I poured myself coffee. "We need to focus on Tyler right now. He already suspects something's wrong." We agreed on the basics. No details about the affair, no blame shifting, emphasis on it being an adult issue unrelated to him. The familiar rhythm of co-parenting felt bizarrely normal amid the wreckage of our marriage. An hour later, I pulled up to Jason's house. Tyler slouched into the passenger seat, eyes glued to his phone. Hey, bud. Hey. No eye contact. Your mom and I need to talk with you when we get home. He finally looked up. Are you getting divorced? The directness of teenage boys, both blessing and curse. We're having serious problems, Tyler. We'll explain everything at home. She cheated, didn't she? His voice was flat. I nearly swerved off the road. What makes you say that? He shrugged, feigning nonchalance though his knuckles were white around his phone. She's been acting weird. Always checking her phone, smiling at texts. Plus I heard her on the phone once, talking all weird and giggly. It wasn't with you. My heart sank. Tyler had noticed what I'd been too busy to see. We'll talk about everything at home, I repeated gently. I hate her, he muttered. No, you don't. Despite everything, I couldn't let him go down that path. She's made some bad choices, but she's still your mother. But she hurt you. She hurt us. I reached over and squeezed his shoulder. Relationships are complicated, Tyler. Adults make mistakes. Big ones sometimes. So you're defending her now? His voice cracked with confusion. No. What happened is wrong, and there will be consequences. But hating your mom will only hurt you in the long run. We drove in silence for several minutes. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, Tyler asked, Are you okay, Dad? The question hit me harder than any revelation about Pam's betrayal. My son was worried about me. I will be, I promised. And for the first time since reading that text message, I actually believed it. The family meeting went about as well as could be expected. Tyler oscillated between stony silence and pointed questions. Pam cried. I maintained calm, presenting a united parental front despite the turmoil churning inside. So, where am I going to live? Tyler demanded, cutting to practical matters. We haven't worked that out yet, Pam began. You'll stay here for now. I interrupted firmly. I'll be getting an apartment nearby, so we can maintain your school and activity routines. Tyler glared at Pam. I want to live with Dad. She flinched. Tyler, honey. Don't honey me, he snapped. You ruined everything. I stepped in. That's enough, Tyler. This situation is between your mother and me. I understand you're upset, but disrespect isn't acceptable. He stormed off to his room. Pam crumpled onto the couch. He hates me. He's hurt. I corrected. Give him time. After assuring Tyler I'd be back tomorrow to help him with basketball practice, I packed some essentials and left. The Marriott would do for another night while I arranged a short-term rental. Marcus called as I was checking in. You free for dinner? Diane's worried about you. An hour later, I sat across from Marcus and Diane at a quiet steakhouse. Their concern was palpable. The company's abuzz with rumors, Marcus reported. Brandon called an emergency meeting with his executive team this morning. Diane squeezed my hand. How's Tyler taking it? About as well as expected. I sighed. Angry, confused. And you, she pressed. I consider the question honestly. Surprisingly okay. The shock's wearing off. Now I'm just processing. Pam's been calling me, Diane admitted, begging me to convince you to reconsider. I shook my head. Some things can't be undone. Marcus nodded approvingly. Damn straight. You deserve better, Kev. We're here for you and Tyler, Diane added. Whatever you need. Their support warmed me. In the midst of losing my marriage, I was rediscovering the value of true friendship. Later, as I worked from my hotel room, my phone lit up with a LinkedIn notification. Rachel Winters, VP of Operations at Westlake Pharmaceuticals, a professional contact I'd always respected, had sent a message. Heard about your situation. When the dust settles, Westlake would be interested in discussing opportunities. Your handling of the Meridian Northeast Territory hasn't gone unnoticed. Interesting. Perhaps this upheaval would lead to unexpected opportunities. Brandon's influence at Navera wouldn't extend to other companies, especially those impressed by my professional conduct. As I drifted toward sleep, I realized something. For the first time in months, possibly years, I felt unburdened. The constant anxiety I'd attributed to work stress, had it actually been subconscious awareness of Pam's deception? Tomorrow would bring practical challenges, lawyers, financials, Tyler's ongoing emotional needs. But tonight, I acknowledged a surprising truth. Sometimes losing what you thought you wanted opens the door to what you actually need. The autumn leaves crunched under my feet as I walked the sidelines of Tyler's basketball game. 6 months had passed since that fateful night. Half a year of rebuilding, readjusting, and rediscovering who Kevin Walsh was outside of his failed marriage. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago. Pam hadn't contested my terms, likely knowing the evidence I compiled would only humiliate her further if made public. She'd kept the house, I'd kept my retirement accounts, and we'd split the rest equitably. Tyler divided his time between us, though he spent most weeknights at my downtown apartment near his school. Brandon Pierce had paid a professional price for his indiscretion. After word spread about our confrontation, Navarro's board had quietly moved him to a subsidiary in Arizona. Technically not a demotion, but everyone in the industry recognized it as exile. Karma had its own timetable. I'd accepted the position at Westlake Pharmaceuticals. The substantial raise and broader responsibilities had initially been secondary considerations. I'd mainly wanted distance from the memories at Meridian. But the fresh start had proven invigorating professionally. For the first time in years, I felt challenged, engaged, valued. "Dad, did you see that shot?" Tyler called, jogging over during timeout. "Three-pointer from downtown," I confirmed with a grin. "Coach is going to start calling you Curry." He rolled his eyes but couldn't hide his pleased smile. The anger that had dominated his emotions in the early months had gradually subsided. He'd started therapy, his choice, surprisingly, and was developing healthier ways to process the family rupture. "Mom's here," he said, nodding toward the bleachers. I glanced over. Pam sat 3 rows up, applauding politely. Our eyes met briefly. She offered a tentative smile. I nodded acknowledgement before returning my attention to Tyler. "Good. She wouldn't miss your game." I meant it. Despite everything, Pam loved our son, and I'd worked hard to preserve that relationship. My own parents' bitter divorce had taught me the damage parental warfare inflicts on children. "She's bringing me to your place after," Tyler confirmed. "We're still on for movie night." "Absolutely. I've got the popcorn ready." As he jogged back to his team, I marveled at his resilience. Children adapt, counselors had assured me, if the adults in their lives prioritize stability and respect. I'd taken those words to heart, swallowing my anger when necessary, facilitating Tyler's relationship with his mother despite my personal feelings. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Good luck to Tyler. Dinner's still on for tomorrow." I smiled, typing back a quick confirmation. Olivia Bell had entered my life unexpectedly. A marketing director at Westlake with a sharp mind and an even sharper wit. We'd started as colleagues, advanced to friendship, and recently ventured into dating territory. Slowly, cautiously, but with genuine promise. Life, I was discovering, had a way of offering new beginnings when you least expected them. 1 year to the day after receiving that anonymous text message, I stood in my kitchen brewing coffee, watching the sun rise over the city skyline. My new condo offered spectacular views, one of the perks of the Westlake position. Tyler sat at the island, devouring breakfast before school. At 15, he'd grown 3 inches in the past year, necessitating an entirely new wardrobe. His relationship with Pam had stabilized into something cautiously affectionate. She'd started dating again recently. No one from our professional circles, thankfully, and Tyler seemed accepting, if not enthusiastic. "Dad, can Ben stay over Friday?" Coach canceled Saturday practice. "Sure," I agreed. "Just remember Olivia is coming for dinner." He rolled his eyes good-naturedly. "I know. I'll be nice." "You're always nice," I countered, ruffling his hair as he ducked away in mock outrage. My relationship with Olivia had progressed steadily over the past 6 months. She understood the complex dynamics of blended families, having navigated her own divorce years earlier. She never pushed for more than Tyler or I were ready to give, yet remained steadfastly present. Later that morning, Marcus stopped by my office at Westlake. "Happy anniversary, of sorts," he said, dropping into the chair across from my desk. "You remembered," I replied dryly. "Hard to forget. You looked like death warmed over that night at the Marriott." He studied me. "You're different now. Older, wiser, more cynical." "Happier," he said simply. The observation startled me, but I couldn't deny its accuracy. Despite the pain, despite the upheaval, I had indeed found a clarity and purpose that had been missing during the latter years of my marriage. That evening, as Olivia and I walked along the riverfront after dinner, she slipped her hand into mine. "Penny for your thoughts." "Just reflecting," I admitted. "A year ago today, my life imploded. And yet here you are," she finished. Still standing. Stronger, even. I nodded, squeezing her hand. I never thank you, you know. For what? For being patient. For understanding that trust doesn't come easily for me anymore. She stopped, turning to face me. Trust is earned, Kevin. I'm willing to put in the work. As I looked into her eyes, I realized that the man I'd become, shaped by betrayal but not defined by it, was perhaps better equipped for genuine partnership than the man I'd been before. The anonymous messenger who'd exposed Pam's affair had never revealed their identity. Sometimes I wondered who had cared enough to step forward, to shatter the comfortable illusion I'd been living. But ultimately, it didn't matter. What mattered was what I'd built from the ruins. I think I'm finally ready, I told Olivia softly. To move forward. Really move forward. Her smile was worth every painful step of the journey that had led me here. Sometimes the end of one story is simply the beginning of a better one.